Welcome back to our Beatrice YouTube channel. Today's class will be learning how to make this beautiful pencil skirt with side ruffles. It's a very simple tutorial and it is beginner friendly. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so this is a requested video. It's a pencil skirt with side ruffles. So making this video is quite simple. You just need your basic skirt block. So to make this now, you need your measurement, your length measurement. That's the skirt length where you need your skirt to be. Your round waist measurement, your round hip measurement. That's about all you need now. And I'm folding my fabric. The measurement I'm using to fold my fabric is the biggest part, which of course is the hip. In this case, the hip I'm working with is 40 inches. So now you divide that 40 inches by 4. Remember, we fold the front and back together, and that's going to give me around 10 inches. So the 10 inches, I'm going to add the necessary allowance that I need. You can use 1.5 or 2 inches as your seam allowance. So if you are using 2 inches, you add that to the 20 inches, and that's going to give you 12 inches. So now you know that you need to multiply your 12 inches by 4. Remember, it's 4 pieces, 1 2 3 4, and that's going to give you 48 inches. Then I'm just going to add 2 inches as my zipper allowance for the two sides of the back. So now I have 50 inches on fold here. So this is on stretch without folding. So I have 15 inches here, and the length is by the length that I am working with. And for me, the full length that I want for this skirt is around 20 to 22 inches. Okay, so it depends on where you want your skirt to stop. So now folding this, now I'm going to fold this into 2 first. Then after folding into 2, I'm going to fold into 4 again. So when I'm folding the 4th one, I'll mark my 1 inch seam zipper allowance. Okay, so you mark your 1 inch zipper allowance. You're not going to include that in your fold. You make it into a straight line. I hope you can see this. You make that 1 inch into a straight line. Okay, so that is where your fold is going to stop. So your front is going to stop where the zipper allowance stops, like this. Okay, so this here is my front and this is my back. So this place now, I'm going to take it as my starting point, and it's going to double as my waist measurement. So now the waist measurement I'm working with is 28 inches. 28 inches divided by 4 is going to give me 7 inches. So now I'm going to measure 7 inches here, and then I'll be adding a dart to this. So for my dart, I'm going to take half inch on both sides for my dart. So that's a total of 1 inch. I'm going to add that 1 inch for my dart allowance. The next measurement I need to take now is my hip measurement. So the hip that I'm working with from my waist to my hip, because it's a bit high, is going to be 9 inches. But I'm adding a skirt band of 2 inches to this. So now I'm not going to start my 9 inches from here. I'm just going to go up by the 2 inches band that I am adding. But at the same time, I'm going to be sewing 2 inches band, this 2 inches band to my skirt. So I need that half an inch to sew it, so that I won't have any shortage. I'm just measuring this half an inch to sew my band to my skirt here. So now I'll start taking that measurement from that half an inch. So I'll go up by 2 inches, and then I'm going to measure my 9 inches for my hip line. So on that point, I'm going to make it into a straight line, and that is where I'm going to take my hip measurement. So the hip I'm working with, like I said earlier, is 10 inches. So I'm going to mark my 10 inches here, like this. And then I'm going to connect this hip to my, I'm going to connect from my hip to my waistline using this curved ruler. Okay, so now the next thing now is to go to the hem of my skirt. So for the skirt length now, I want the skirt to be around 21 inches long. So now the 21 inches, I'm going to start to measure it from here, my starting point. And then I have 21 inches here. I'm not going to be adding a line. I'm not going to be adding lining to this, but you can add lining to yours if you want. So the excess that I have there is what I'm going to use to hem it. So I have around 1 inch there to just hem it in. So if you're going to be adding a lining to this, you cut it the same way we are cutting this skirt. So now on the hemline, now what I have on my hip, because I want it to be a bit pencil, I have 10 inches there. I'm just going to subtract 1 or 1.5 inches depending on how tapered you want it. So I'm just subtracting 1 inch from that, and then I have 9 inch. So again, using my curved ruler, I'm going to connect from that point, from my hip point to where this 9 inches is, like this. Okay, and I'm just going to mark it straight down. So now this is my actual measurement. I still need allowances for sewing, seam allowance or whatever it is that you want. So you can do 1.5 or 2 inches depending on what you sew with. Well, I'm still going to be weaving off this because I'm not adding lining to it, so I can just make it 2 inches. So now I'm going to add 2 inches to this. On my hip also, I'm going to add 2 inches. And then on the hem also, I'm going to add 2 inches. And then I'm going to use my curve to connect all of this again. So from my waist to my hip, and then from my hip to the hem of my skirt. Okay, so after all this now, I'm going to take my scissors and then I'll cut out my skirt pattern. Okay, so for the dart, you're going to take your bust span measurement. The bust span I'm working with is 8 inches. So 8 inches divided by 2 is going to give me 4 inches. So here I'm going to mark my 4 inches, and then the dart leg is going to be from my waistline. I'll make it 4.5 or 5 inches. So I'm making it 5 inches, which is here. So here now I'm going to mark the 4 inches again so that I can have a straight line. So I've marked this, and then I'm going to connect this. So remember, I added 1 inch for my dart, so I'm taking a dart of half inch on both sides here, and then I'm going to just connect this like this, and this is going to be my dart. So the essence of this is I want to notch each of my dart legs so that it's going to be easy for me to take my dart when I get to my machine. I will not need to measure it again. Okay, so when I get there, I'll know that my dart is on these notches. So now my skirt is ready. The next thing now is to work on my ruffle. So at this point, if you're adding lining to this, you need to cut your lining exactly the same way you have cut your fabric, like this, and then you use your lining to turn it separately, the front and back, before we continue. So you use your lining to turn them separately before we continue. Because I'm not adding lining to this, I'm just going to continue with my sewing anyway. So you must have turned this front part with lining, you must have turned the back also with lining separately. You turn it, and then you bring it out from, you turn it completely on the side and on the center back, and then you bring it out from the front, because you don't need to turn the upper part here, because we are still going to be fixing a band to that. So the band will take care of making that part neat. So now the next thing now is to work on our ruffles. So for my ruffles, I have a long strip of fabric. The length I used for this is my length measurement multiplied by 3. So in my case, I'm working with a length of 21 inches, and I just multiplied that by 3, and that gave me around 63 inches, and the width of this is around 6 inches. So I just cut out 6 inches, and then I hemmed it on this part that is going, this is the part that I'm fixing to my skirt, so it's not going to show. I did not hem it, but the other parts, this part and this other part, I've hemmed it, as you can see. And also the type of Ankara fabric that I'm using, you can see that the front is significantly different from the back. So if you want it to be the same, you will turn it so that you have what you have on the right side on the wrong side also, so that you can turn it out neatly before you do this. So I wanted to run a gather stitch, and then I'm going to gather it to the size of my skirt length measurement. So I cut 2 of these for each of my sides for my skirt. So now I'm gathering this to my skirt measurement. Okay, so I've gone ahead to take my darts. You can see my darts are taken now. This is my back, this is my front, and these are my back panels, and I've taken my darts. The notches will just help you to know exactly where you need to fold. So now I'm going to work on the front bodies. I've gathered my ruffles. These are my 2 ruffles. I've gathered it to my actual length. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure my waist. So the waist measurement I'm working with is 28 inches. So now I'm going to divide it by 2 because I have my full front here. Divided by 2 is going to give me 14 inches. So here I'm going to measure 14 inches. And this is where my 14 inches stops. So now I'm going to measure what I have left. And here I think I have around 3.5 inches because I later trimmed off parts of my allowances. So I have about 3 inches. I'm just going to fold it into 2 now, and then I'll knot what I have there. So the next thing now is to go to my waist, and for my waist I have, for my hip, remember I have a 1/2 inch here. So now I'm going to start it there, and then I'm going to measure 9 inches. So this is 9 inches from my hip, and then on my hip is 40. So divided by 2 is going to give me 20. So I have 20 inches here. So now I'm going to measure the excess that I have on my hip also, and then I'm going to divide it into 2. Okay, and then for the hem also, I deducted 9 inches from my 10 inches. So 1 inch from my 10 to make it 9. 9 multiplied by is going to give me 18 inches. So from here I'm going to measure 18 inches. And then after measuring my 18 inches, whatever it is that I have there, I'm going to divide it by 2. And then I'm going to connect all of this. So I'm just going to quickly use my free hand. So what I've done here now, I'm going to do on the other side. So for the other side, you just need to come here, measure the excess that you have, and just replicate it on this part. Okay, then you go over to your hip also, measure the excess. So that's what you need to do. Okay, so after making that mark, I'm turning it like this so that you can see this line. So now you pick your ruffle now, and then I'm going to pin. You can see the way I'm pinning it. This is what we want to achieve by the time we're done. We want it to come like this. And if you're using this type of fabric, you have to be careful. The right side needs to be facing the front, not the back. So now I'm just going to place it right side facing right side. I'm going to deduct 1/2 inch from my band before I start placing my ruffle. And then I'm going to place my ruffle following this line that I have. So you can just pin it down or you just sew it. And then on the hem also, you have to stop where your actual length stop. Remember, we are going to need the rest to fold it in. So now I'm just going to take this to the machine and sew my ruffle to it on the 2 sides before I bring it back for us to fix our back. Okay, so I've gone ahead to sew my ruffles, as we can see, for the both 2 sides. So the next thing now is to bring my back, and for my back panel also, on my zipper allowance I measured down 6 to 7 inches depending on the zipper you're working with, and then from there I sew it down up to where I want my slit to start. Okay, so now my 2 backs are also together. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to place my front and back on each other, and then I'm going to sew it on the side seam. So now this seam that I already used in sewing my you can see is on the mark. So the seam I've used on my band is going to guide me. That's what I'm just going to follow. So now I'm just going to place this against each other now, and then I'll take it to the machine now and follow this line and sew it. And on the other side also, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to follow that line, and then I'm going to sew it. So I've gone ahead to sew it on the sides, as you can see, and I just followed what I have there. So after doing that, I hemmed it on the lower part using the allowance that I left. So you can see that my hemming stopped where my ruffles is. So when you're hemming this, you just need to stop when you get to the side seam so that you don't take your ruffles with the sewing and then you continue on the side. So you just hem it all around, and then on the slit side, you can see when I was hemming, I folded one of the zipper allowance in, while I left the other one like this, so that it can give me this covering effect, so that it can just rest on each other like what you're seeing. So all of this now you need to weave it, because we are not going to be adding a lining to this. So now when I turn this out, this is what I have. So the last thing you need to do now is to fix your band to this. So now I've cut out my band, and I'm going to be adding an interface to this. So use your waist measurement to cut out a band. The length of this band is 2.5 inches on fold. So by the time I open it like this, it's going to be 5 inches, as you can see. So I need half inch to sew it to this. That was why I left my half inch. So I need half inch to sew it, and by the time I sew it with half inch, I'll be left with my actual 2 inches band. So now you're going to be sewing this round your skirt, and then you fix your zipper and your skirt is ready. Okay, so the band is fixed now, and you can see how beautiful our pencil skirt with side ruffles is looking like. So you can rock this anyhow you want. I paired this with this beautiful corset top, and the tutorial on how to make this corset top is also on the channel if you have not seen it. So I hope you enjoyed making this simple tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.